This is the first tutorial on ratios for Year 8 Maths. Understanding ratios is important for completing many tasks in your everyday life. When you're in food tech or you're making a cake, you use ratios about how many eggs to how much flour. If you want to double that recipe, you use a ratio to double that recipe. If you're a builder mixing concrete, to be able to make concrete, you need to know a ratio, and it's to do with the cement to sand to gravel. Or if you're a photographer enlarging an image, you need to know the ratio or the scale factor to make sure that you don't distort the picture when you're enlarging it. So at the end of this lesson, you should have an understanding of being able to write and simplify ratios, and also understand the relationship between ratios, fractions, and percentages. So the first question to ask is what is a ratio? A really easy definition, or I think an easy definition of a ratio, is that it compares two or more amounts of the same type, written using the colon symbol. So it could be a comparison between the number of dogs and cats, or it could be a comparison between the amount of flour and sugar in a recipe. A really good example is a common ratio that's used in building, and it's a ratio for concrete. So with concrete, there's always going to be 1 part cement with 2 parts sand and 3 parts gravel. And written as a ratio, this is 1:2:3. The actual measured amounts don't matter. It's the proportion that does. So you could have 1 wheelbarrow of cement, 2 wheelbarrows of sand, and 3 wheelbarrows of gravel. And that would work just as well as 1 bucket of cement, 2 buckets of sand, and 3 buckets of gravel. There would just be a smaller total amount. But it's the ratio or the comparison that actually matters. There are 2 main types of ratio. There's a part-to-part ratio. So that might be if you're looking at how many cats and dogs are in the house. You might have, the ratio might be the number of cats to the number of dogs. So if you had 2 cats and 3 dogs, the ratio would be 2:3. The other ratio that you can have is a part-whole ratio. And that would be something like the cat to the total number of animals, or the dog to the total number of animals. So in the previous example, we had 3 cats and 2 dogs. So the ratio of cat to animal would be 3:5. So you can have 2 different types of ratios, part to part or part to whole. The second really important thing to understand is the relationship between ratios, fractions, and percentages. Because the easiest way to explain is they're each other just by another name. So if I had a ratio of 11:30, that would be the same as a fraction of 11/30, which would also be the same as the percentage, 36.67%. So you can see that it's pretty easy to convert between ratios, fractions, and percentages. The last part of this tutorial is about simplifying ratios. Ratios are simplified just in the same way that we simplify fractions. And that's dividing each part by a common factor. So if you had a ratio 5:20, a common factor with that would be 5, because you can divide both by 5. So 5:20 is the same as 1:4. And if you divide by the highest common factor like I just did, the ratio will always be in the simplest form. If you don't divide by the highest common factor, you'll always have another number you can divide by, and eventually you will get to that simplest form.